Today we'll be doing a follow-up video to the SN Pixel V4. I'm going to show you how to add new sound fonts, how to edit the config file, and how to manipulate files that are already on the SD card. Let's begin. The first thing that you're going to want to do after inserting your microSD card is make a backup of all the files. So I'm going to select everything, copy, and I'll just put a folder on the desktop. And we'll call it SN Pixel V4 Original Files. And paste it. And as an extra step, I'm going to make all of the files read-only. So I can't edit anything in my original folder. So having a look at the folder structure of SN Pixel V4, it is pretty much identical to XenoPixel. Each of the numbered folders is a different sound font bank. So let's go into the first one and find the file called font. And if I listen to it, it tells me what it is. So like XenoPixel, I like to create a text file in each folder, and I always start with an underscore and give it a name. And the reason for that underscore is because when you go into a folder, it'll always appear at the very top. So now right away I can see this is Ahsoka Tano. You would have to go and change each one of these manually.
Anakin.
Or I shouldn't say change, but you'd have to create each file manually. Optional, right? It's just something to make life a little easier when you're going into the folders. Okay, so I'm just going to do just the first two. I'm not going to create a file right now for every single folder, but you can if you like. So I just have the first two done. And you can see that there are 27 sound fonts pre-installed. We have a set folder, and we have an update file. So as TXQ releases new updates, they'll release a new file. And you can see that this file was created December 1st, 2022. And this is a good way of knowing what version of firmware you have installed. If your firmware is this date, it'll be the exact same one I have. If it's a newer date, well, then it's newer. Let's have a look at the set folder. So here are all the sounds that are built into the lightsaber. So for instance,
Ignition 1.
Ignition 1, Ignition 2.
Ignition 2.
So it has the 12 different...
Ignition 12.
It has the different ignition types. But that is not very helpful, right? Because it doesn't tell you what's what. So instead, I'm going to use Free Tool Online and change these files so that it's something more clear as to what it is. And same with Humlight.
Basic 1.
These are your blade styles. Now, I've already went and listed what all the blade styles are and what all the ignition types are. So I'm just going to have my YouTube description open. So you can see that it has blade 12. As far as I know, there are only 11 ignition types. But you know what? We'll leave it there, and We'll see if a 12th ignition type exists. And same thing with blade styles. So again, there are 9 that it lets you cycle through, but there are 10 listed. So maybe there's a hidden one, and we'll find out after. So these are all the sound effects for the different ignition types. So Preon 1 is actually going to be the sound effect for broken ignition, because standard ignition is not going to have one of these lighting effects / sound effects. And there are also 4 pre-off files. And we're going to play with that as well and see if that works. Then you have your volume. There are a lot of different files for volume. These files aren't used in the single button SN Pixel V4. You have
Loud volume,
loud,
low volume, medium volume.
yeah. So there's a lot of extra files in here that aren't being used by the Saber.
Mute on.
The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to overwrite these files and give them better descriptions. I'm going to use a free text-to-speech software converter, and I'll put a link in the description that'll take you here. So you write your text in the box, you choose your voice, and there's many languages and many accents. You can control the speed, and then you can listen to it first.
Standard ignition. Standard ignition.
No, not liking that one.
Standard ignition.
Standard ignition.
Okay, that's all right. So I'm going to download that file. And then I'm going to have a look over here, and okay, the next one is broken ignition. Let's listen to it.
Broken ignition.
And we'll download that one. Okay, so I downloaded 11 different files. And the earliest
Standard
one
ignition.
will be standard ignition. So I need to rename this the same as Blade 1. And this one will be Blade 2. Okay, so I went and renamed the files. So Blade 2 should be broken.
Broken ignition.
So now that I have the files named correctly, they need to be converted to WAV files instead of MP3s. So on the desktop, I have my shortcut to Format Factory. I will put a link in the description. That'll take you to that download. So what we want is audio, and we want to convert to WAV. I take my files, I highlight them all, I drag them, and I press OK. I'm also keeping an eye of where it's going to be outputting the files. So let's just tell it to output to source file folder. So it's just going to put all the WAV files in the same folder, in the download folder. I press OK, I press start. And it doesn't take very long at all. Okay, now let's just delete all those MP3s. So I'm going to organize them by type and select the MP3s, delete them. Just so I don't accidentally copy them. Now I'm going to take my files and I'm going to drag them into the set folder on my thumb drive. And yes, I want to replace the files. Alright, so now the ignition types
Broken ignition.
are actually going to have a much better description than just blade 1, blade 2. The next ones I want to do are hum light. So hum light are your blade types.
Basic 1. Basic 2.
So again, the blade types are fire, steady, pulse. So the first one is going to be fire. So I'm going to go back to this program and we're going to say fire blade.
Fireblade.
And I'm going to download it. And now I'm going to do the same thing for the other 8.
Pulse.
And what I've just discovered is that it's not enough just to type it and click download. You have to type it, click preview, and then click download. Okay, so now I have downloaded my new files.
Fireblade. Steady.
And now I'm going to select them all. Right click on the top one. Choose rename. Call it Humlight. And just like that, it automatically adds the numbering in the brackets. And now we can convert these to WAV files. So once again, open up Format Factory. Take my files, output to the download folder, press OK, and press start. Doesn't take very long. Now let's delete the MP3 files. And so there we go. We have all 9 hum lights. So we're going to move those into here. And again, replace the files in the destination. Now, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. If you like the voice that I'm using, I will create a zip file and put it on Google Drive. And you can just download these files and throw them onto your Saber rather than having to create them from scratch. That's cool too. And if I wanted to, I could go ahead and change all the other voices as well. But you get the idea. You can go ahead and do this to any file you like. The next thing is the config file. So the config file is in your set folder. Just going to make the font a little bigger. So the very top line, Bluetooth name, device name Saber. This soundboard does have Bluetooth, but I have not been able to figure out how to connect with Bluetooth. I don't know if there's going to be certain software that they're releasing. I've tried connecting it directly using my PC. Nothing, it won't connect. So for now, Bluetooth doesn't seem to do anything. So this is going to look very similar to XenoPixel. And anytime you have a comment, there should be a £sign or hashtag before the writing, or else it's going to read that line as code. So pixel number should be 116 if you're using a 82 centimeter blade. The default length for 92 centimeters is 132. So you can leave it at 116. If you find that your tip drag isn't lighting up, then you would just reduce this number down. If you go too low, the end of the blade just won't have anything lit up at all. So you can play with this number until you find the sweet spot. But 116 should be just fine. Channel volume, I just leave that the way it is. Same with mixer volume. This will control the maximum volume of the lightsaber. Your clash sensitivity, flash on clash when you're tapping the blade. If you want it very sensitive, you just leave it the way it is. So stab power. If you want to be able to turn the saber on with stabbing, you leave it at 1. I haven't been able to get it to work for stabbing, but I'll leave it on. And stab power off. Well, I don't want to be able to stab and turn the saber off. Twist power on off, again, twisting your wrist turns the saber on, twisting your wrist again will turn it off. And the sensitivity. If you find that you're accidentally turning the saber on and off while twisting, you just reduce the sensitivity number. Swing power, so when you swing the saber, it'll turn on. And again, the sensitivity. You can leave it the way it is. If you find that it's not quite responding, you just make the number higher. The last section of the config file in the set folder is almost identical to XenoPixel. This is where you would select the colors for each of the different sound fonts, the blade style, and the ignition type. What you don't have are the options to control the out and in speed. And again, because this could be prototype, I found that editing these lines has no impact on the saber itself. So for instance, if I want to switch Ahsoka to a broken ignition, I have to do it while the saber is on. Editing the config file right now doesn't seem to do anything. So that about does it for SNPixel V4. Very similar to XenoPixel. I hope that they have some new updates coming out that'll add some more functionality. Otherwise, very easy to add new sound fonts and to manipulate the files on the SD card.
Stacked ignition. Rainbow.
Isn't that a lot better than just Ignition 1, Ignition 2, or Blade 1, Blade 2? I like it. If you did find the video helpful, as always, don't forget to click on that like button, hit subscribe, tap the bell, and you'll stay up to date when I release new reviews. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section, and I'll answer them as best I can. Until next time, I have been your host, The Frugal Jedi. Thank you for watching.